Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Sorry for the 5-minute late beginning here. Just had to get a few things taken care of as we get ready for what's going to be a very, very interesting storm that is taking shape for the eastern part of the United States. And I'm basically, when I say the eastern part of the United States, I'm talking from Florida on up through Maine. It is not that often when you see a map like this that I'm going to show you. This is the Weather Service's map with regards to the watches and warnings. And we have winter storm warnings up in northeastern Florida. I mean, that's really just amazing. You just don't see that in most years. But from northeastern Florida through much of southeastern Georgia, coastal South and North Carolina, all under winter storm warnings. We have winter storm watches up for northeastern North Carolina, coastal Virginia, through the Delmarva Peninsula, southern Delaware, the coastal counties of New Jersey, to Long Island. It's up for Suffolk County and not for Nassau. Don't ask me why. And then we have winter storm watches up for southeastern New England and for coastal Massachusetts, on up through New Hampshire, coastal New Hampshire, and inland into New Hampshire, and all of the state of Maine. This is going to be one heck of a storm that's developing, and I have to tell you, the needle this storm is threading is very, very fine indeed, because of the track and kind of the quirkiness of some of the models. We are at the point now where this system has shifted on the models a little bit to the west every single run, a handful of miles, but it's been doing this for the last 2 days, and these handful of miles are starting to add up a little bit. So now we've kind of run out of room for a westward shift without starting to cause some, perhaps bringing into the possibility of some major difficulties, certainly for the immediate coastal areas of, say, Delaware and on up through coastal New Jersey, Long Island, coastal Connecticut, and southeastern New England. You know, the line is getting pretty thin. I think those areas are going to see a moderate event out of this. This is not going to be a widespread 12 to 18 foot snowfall that extends all the way into inland areas. This is going to be confined right along the immediate coast. Now, if you look at the satellite loop, we can already see the energy that's involved. You can look at the clouds that are coming into the western Great Lakes. That is the northern part of this trough that's swinging southeastward. And you have the southern stream trough, the short wave, that is now moving through Oklahoma and Arkansas and swinging eastward. And that is going to create a storm. You're going to start to see low pressure getting energized. And this is what's really unusual about this particular system, in that we're starting the low out basically in the Bahamas. And that just really doesn't happen too often. Most times when lows that start from there don't really have much impact along the eastern seaboard. But because you're getting this deep upper trough, this deep long wave trough that's going to be developing in the east, where the flow along the east coast is going to be more southwesterly or south-southwesterly, that low is going to move up offshore, but again, coming perilously close to causing some issues. Now, I'll just look at my local snowfall maps, and you can always go to your local National Weather Service website to take a look at what it may be forecasting for your area. I didn't really have too much time to kind of do an extension all the way down, but I'll just focus for those of you who are in my general area, which is eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Long Island, southeastern New York, and Connecticut. This is first for New Jersey, and I'm not in too much disagreement with this. Coastal Monmouth, Ocean counties, Burlington, Atlantic, Cape May, in that zone of 4 to 6. And you can see that the amounts tail off as you go west and north, and they tail off rather sharply. And this is one of there are two forecast issues here. One is the western edge of the heavy snow. Where is that going to be? And the other is the cutoff line in the west, because in storms like this that are this intense and this wrapped up, you can have a very, very sharp edge. We could wind up having, say, the western edge of this 1 to 2 getting pulled in eastward, where it's running relatively close to the 3 to 4 and the 4 to 6 inch line. So that happens a lot of times when you have these, a really intense storm system. And I got the New York map. Let me see if I can find it. There it is. It was hiding on me. So here we have the National Weather Service's map, which they've just updated, I believe. Yes, so we have the new National Weather Service snowfall forecast maps for New York, for Long Island, and theirs for Suffolk County, 6 to 8 inches for me, at least where I am, east of the Twin Forks, and also for southeastern Connecticut. So these are the areas that are under the winter storm watch. And then we've got 4 to 6 back through Nassau, 3 to 4 into southwestern Connecticut and toward New York City. And then the amounts tail off from there as you go north and west. This is going to be really tight. I don't see this becoming, say a widespread foot-plus snowfall, but I want to be careful here for the areas, say for the eastern half of Long Island, southeastern Connecticut, and points eastward because of how this low is tracking. So why don't we bring up a couple of models here that I think that bear watching. I'm going to actually start tonight with the RGEM model, because we are in the RGEM's range, and it's one of my go-to models when we have such situations like this. So I will bring up the RGEM really close, and here you have it, and we'll get this in motion. And the nice thing about the RGEM now is they recently just extended it to 54 hours, and they are in 1 hour increments, which makes it really easy. We can see hour by hour. Now look at what develops here overnight into tomorrow morning in Florida. That is ice, freezing rain, and even some snow in the Florida Panhandle, and in southwestern Georgia. That ice and snow extend their way up into South Carolina, and now we start to see the low developing there east of Florida and north of the northernmost Bahamas. That surface low moves northeastward right through, here we go now into 1 a.m. Thursday. You see the snow spreading up into New Jersey at this point, slowing down through Delaware and through Virginia and North Carolina. And look how wrapped up this thing is. The pressure is down into the 950s. This is as strong as a strong Category 2, almost a Category 3 hurricane in terms of based on pressure. And here we are at 10 a.m. on Thursday with snow throughout much of New England, back down through New Jersey, down into Delaware. But you see what happens on the west side as drier air starts to get in. The snow is thinned out a bit, and that's what I'm saying about this really fine line being so close. And in the meantime, over eastern Long Island, Rhode Island, and eastern Connecticut, there's a sledgehammer of heavy snow here that develops as the low goes to the northeast. This storm passes not too far from 40 north, 70 west, what is known as the benchmark. It only is going to be, it's going to pass maybe, according to the RGEM model anyway, within about 60 or 70 miles of the benchmark. It may wind up seeing that being a little bit closer if these westward wobbles continue. But this would suggest at least the potential for some blizzard conditions over eastern Long Island. And remember, a blizzard does not mean a foot of snow. You could have 3, 4, 5 inches of snow. It's heavy snow over 3 hours with visibilities near zero. Those are the real, that's the most important criteria with this. And we are going to see definitely some gusts, some wind gusts that are going to be quite excessive here. In fact, when I put the 10-meter wind map up, it really kind of illustrates, just how strong the wind field is with this. I mean, look at these winds down here on the south side of sustained winds of 60 to 70 miles an hour, and the red area that is all 40 knots or higher, going right over the eastern part of Long Island, sustained 30 knots or higher, covering all of Suffolk County pretty much. So that's certainly enough to create blizzard conditions if we're getting that sledgehammer of heavy snow at the time. And there you can see, I just kind of put my little cursor over the L so you can see where the model has it, and it's just very close to 40 and 69.5, so it's actually maybe closer to 30 miles from the benchmark. So, you know, again, kind of nervous here about the snow amounts. You know, I'm kind of going with the idea of a 4 to 6 inch snowfall for the areas that get the most. I might be a little bit conservative, but you know, I'm kind of playing it close to the vest at this point. When we look at the total accumulated precip, the RGEM model produces, you know, the darker green is 4/10 of an inch of liquid, the dark blue is 1/2 inch, so you can see where the 1/2 inch of liquid is. The snowfall ratios, I think, are going to start off at around 10 or 12 to 1, and then toward the second half of the storm, as we start to get into some bitter cold air getting drawn into the circulation, we're going to see those snow ratios go up to maybe 16 or 17 to 1. So, you know, somebody could squeeze out a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of liquid. That could wind up being every bit of 9, 10, or 11 inches before it's all said and done. And then after that, the big story is going to be the brutal cold that follows. I mean, this is going to be just amazing cold that we're going to see. I have the map here up. This is for Friday evening at 7 p.m. I'm sorry, this is Thursday evening at 7 p.m. And you can see temperatures already in the teens and low 20s near the coast, but look at the single digits and below zero that are setting up in the plains. And I'm going to switch over to the Canadian model's temperature profile because I think that this one has the better profile with regards to how cold it's going to get. But by Friday morning, it's going to be down, I think, in the single digits in much of the Northeast down into the mid-Atlantic states. And it may have a real tough time getting back to the low teens in some places. And then look at Saturday morning. Much of this white area that you see here is either low single digits or below zero. Saturday daytime, another brutal day. And then Sunday morning especially. Look at all these below zero temperatures all over the Northeast, down into the northern mid-Atlantic states, and even down into North Carolina. This may be, for some areas, it's going to be record-setting cold, and it's going to be maybe the coldest two-day combination for some places in quite a few years. I mean, I don't know how many years it goes back to, but that is going to be certainly a possibility here on the backside of this storm system. Now I'm going to switch over to we'll go to the GFS, because one of the things that's kind of bothered me about the GFS in this whole event is, you know, how it's handling this system as a whole. The GFS traditionally has trouble with storms like this in a number of ways, and you know, this kind of has me concerned with respect to where it's going to wind up. Now, here's the situation. If we look here tomorrow evening, there are 3 distinct surface lows that are shown here, and that really doesn't happen too often. I'm wondering whether the model is just kind of, this model, and the NAM is having this trouble too, is the emphasis of the energy that's coming down to the north and getting involved here, is it really picking out the right low? And that's a question I have, because as we move northward, we eventually consolidate into one low structure, although you can still see the remnants of the other 2 lows. They kind of weaken and get kicked out to the east, but the low near the coast, I guess, becomes the main low. And one of the things that happens here is that low kind of tracks northward and then jogs straight east. It takes like a jump of about 180 miles east and then resumes a northeast course from there. So I'm wondering why does it take, that's the question in my mind, why is it taking that eastward jog like that? But that could be a very important piece to this puzzle, because if it's wrong on that jog, let's say the final position is correct, but it's wrong on this jog straight east before it goes northeast, you wind up with a track getting ultimately to the same spot, but it does it by tracking closer to the coastlines from Delaware to southern New England, and that will impact snow amounts. And the GFS actually, does show a fair amount of moisture here in terms of total accumulated precip. It's actually shown more on this run than it has in any of its previous runs, with that ½ inch of liquid touching the New Jersey coast and getting into over Long Island. But again, you see how sharp it is when you go just west and north of there. It drops off very, very quickly. So you will not really have to go that far to find much less snow or very little of it. But always the challenge in the forecast is, where you are with respect to all of this, and it becomes, nerve-wracking to say the least. Why don't we put up the upper air so we can look at what the whole jet stream pattern here looks like. And this is way up in the atmosphere, but you can see that big jet streak. The surface low is represented by the L that's east of Cape Cod, and this huge jet that just drives down across the southeast and then out into the Atlantic. The circulation of this thing is going to be huge, and it's going to have the look of a hurricane when it's out there. This is going to be one incredibly powerful cyclone when it's all said and done. We'll go down to the usual level that we look at with the jet stream, and you can see the issue here with the trough. You've got that northern trough extending down. You see that southern energy is not quite phased with it. It gets kicked out as a separate, well-developed entity to the northeast, and then that northern energy just kind of comes down, just sort of kicks it out like you would punt a football, and it kicks away to the northeast, and you've got this remaining deep trough here in the eastern part of the United States to drag down this enormous amount of cold air that's going to be coming straight from the north, really, not from the west or the northwest, but from the north. And that's why it's going to be especially cold as we go through Friday and Sunday, and the winds are going to be a big issue with regards to wind chill as well. Now, ultimately, that's going to eventually pull out, and we may see some genuine moderation early next week. And also, I'm going to have to look at the possibility. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I want to get to your questions, but we will moderate. There will be a front coming through here on later Monday into Monday night. Now, one of the things I would caution with this is it does try to warm things up, but the ground is so bitterly cold and frozen that we could have a situation where a lot of this rain, whatever rain we do get, and it doesn't really look overly impressive, to tell you the truth. Whatever rain we do get might freeze on surfaces for at least several hours until the ground can warm up. That may be a concern. And the prior run was trying to show some kind of wave development on the front after it went by, but this is sort of backed off on this run. But again, didn't really spend too much time with it. But then we have another cold Arctic high coming down with a shot of very cold air for later next week before that pulls out, and then we get the next cold front that approaches for late next week. But you know what? I'm not really going to get too wrapped up in this at this point, because we've got this first storm front and center, and I think that's where we're going to spend our time on. And let me bring myself back into the mix here. Where are we? There we go. So it's good to see a nice crowd here tonight. Let me just tell you right now, at 9:15 Eastern Time, I will be with my colleague Joe Rayo, and we will be on my Facebook page with the Joe Rayo, Joe Cioffi Show. So be sure to tune in on that. Salem Surveying, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it greatly. Thank you. All right, so let me run through some of your questions here. So just bear with me, because I'm going to try and go back to the beginning. So give me a sec. Okay, so Tom Adams downplaying the storm. DT, that's weather risk. Dave Tyler is downplaying the snowstorm potential for Boston. He's looking at the European The European model today, I don't know. It was just, I was surprised at how, even though it kind of had a bit of a westward bias to it today, it didn't really do too much with the precip. But you know something? The European isn't a gospel. So, and it really hasn't done very well lately in some respects. So I'm kind of going to pay more attention to these short-term models more than anything else at this point. And Tyler Knapp, the pressure on the GFS at 957, the pressure on the RGEM down to 945 millibars. That is incredible, really. And these things happen every so often. Over the years, there have been storms this deep, and a lot of times they just wind up staying out in the open waters of the Atlantic. This one's close enough where it's going to be problematic. Just running through all your comments. I think southern New Jersey, coastal New Jersey is out of the question for accumulating snow. Oh, it's in the forecast. I stink at OBs, whatever OBs are. You've got your winter storm warning watches up all the way up and down the coastal counties. This is going to be snow for the coastal counties. If you were in Northwest Jersey right now, I'd be worried about not getting very much if you're a snow lover. Let's see. We got Garo Vestas Bobcat here. Awesome. Northern New Jersey, Northeast, hopefully getting some heavy snowfall. I've got Northeast Jersey in the band of about the western edge of the band of 3 to 4 inches before it decreases rapidly going north and west of there. I got to tell you, a little bit more of a westward shift. I'm going to push the line a bit more to the west. If it, the other issue is whether the western edge gets pulled in because the storm is so intense, and I think that's what some of the short-term models are indicating. Delvin, Joe Rayo is he's busy doing his stuff tonight, but he'll be on the Facebook show at 9:15. So you'll catch us then there, and we'll be live blogging. We'll be live streaming the new NAM. So we'll see if the NAM continues to nudge a little bit to the west. Let's see. The NWS isn't doing it anymore because they updated their watches and warnings. Okay, I'm sure. By the way, I'm not sure if you're referring to, I guess maybe because they put the winter storm watches and so on. There are no blizzard watches anymore. They're not going to use those because they're just too confusing. They will issue blizzard warnings when blizzard conditions are imminent, but they will not issue a blizzard watch because people have come to equate blizzards with 2 and 3 foot snowfalls, and that just isn't always the case. Stephen Franco, my buddy, it seems like this storm is a faster mover, I guess, because there is no blocking to slow it down. Correct, Stephen. This system is moving is going to be moving very fast. The North Atlantic Oscillation, or NAO, which measures blocking, is crashing very rapidly to negative on Thursday when it makes its bottom, but it's not enough to cause blocking. The actual development of this major storm is causing the NAO to crash in a huge way, and that's something that might have to be paid attention to because it immediately bounces back up to positive, and I'm just wondering whether that will be the case or not. But I'm going to keep my eye on that to see what happens. But certainly this is the rubber band in the atmosphere in terms of the pressure pattern is getting stretched big time. That's causing this storm to form. You've had this extreme Arctic air, that extreme northern jet. It's only logical, I guess, to follow that you would now have a major storm to a big major storm in terms of the lowest the pressure, in order to sort of equalize everything. And that's what the function of this storm is going to be. Much like a hurricane's function is basically to redistribute the excess heat that's picked up into the atmosphere, this storm is going to be pretty much redistributing, I suppose we could say it's going to be redistributing the excess cold, so that once this Arctic air mass plays out this weekend, we are going to get that little break of moderation for a couple of days, and I may actually go above freezing here. I'm going to be really curious to see how cold it gets, because you're going to have a setup for below zero temperatures, and that's kind of tough to do, especially in the big cities of New York City, Philadelphia, and Washington. And actually, I sometimes think it's toughest in New York City for whatever reason. But we may have a real shot of pulling it off in any of those three cities, if not possibly all three. James Hoffman, any chance New York City will get more than 6? I think it's possible if we get a little bit more of a westward shift. It wouldn't take too much. But you got to remember, too, we don't have a lot of time with this. You know, this storm is going to be an 8 to 12 hour event from beginning to end. And it's going to be moving right along. So we're going to have to get that precip to kind of come in and get into some of those heavier snow bands. So Long Island, I think, in a better spot for the 6. Central and eastern Connecticut, especially east of I-91, I think in a better spot for 6 to 8 maybe, because they'll have the storm get into the deeper echoes and on the radar and have a little bit more time with it. But it's not impossible that the back edge of 6 could wind up being in New York at New York City. The southern part of the Outer Banks, you know, that's kind of tough. Let me take a quick look and see what's being generated there, because I didn't spend that much time. And of course, being the Outer Banks, you don't often get snow there, but I will. You know, they actually have those winter storm warnings up for the Outer Banks. I'm just kind of curious at what the Weather Service there is going for, say, for Morehead City. They're actually going for 1 to 3 inches of snow there. Amazing what they're forecasting. But yeah, you know, if they're going for 1 to 3 in Morehead City, I'm going to go in, one of my favorite spots. Let's see if I can get the forecast for Nag's Head. You know, they're only giving me the marine forecast there. You know, I love the Outer Banks, and I've spent several summers there vacationing. It's a beautiful place. I got to think that snowfall there is going to be tough, but not impossible. Why don't you shoot for a coating to 1 inch or 2 and keep you? And if you're a snow lover, you can keep your fingers crossed. DeVeo Don, thank you so much. Hitting super chat, getting myself a cigar tonight, I think. Between Salem Surveying and DeVeo. I hope I said that right. Anthony Siders, you're not in a good spot there in Ohio, but you did get some snow with another couple of these nickel and dime events. We don't see any big events coming to you anytime soon, although you do have that weather system approaching with the warmer air, so you might be able to trigger that off. Are you angry that someone called me a model hugger on Twitter? Did somebody call me a model hugger on Twitter? Really? No, that's nice. Doesn't bother me. You know what? I've been doing this for 40. Seriously, I've been doing this for 40 years. Reaver 501. You know what? They want to call me a model hugger. Call me a model hugger. What can I tell you? You would think they would have better things to do than to worry about what I'm doing. I did see Mimi the 3 kilometer. Sean K, thank you very much for hitting super chat. Thank you. Joe, check the NAM 3. It shows an interesting cutoff on Long Island. Yeah, I did see the NAM 3. The NAM 3 brings that upper low very, very close to Long Island, and it also hammers Long Island. It's got a sledgehammer of very heavy snow for a couple of hours on its radar presentation, and that's very interesting that it did that. That's got me concerned for Suffolk County that there could be some bigger snow amounts there before the system pulls on out. Correct, always smiling. Sticks and stones may break my bones. It's the things people get worked up over. It's mind-boggling. North Florida, BDG 99 Wolves. I'm not sure what that means when you say BDG AMER. So if you could elaborate there. Tides in the full moon. I think coastal flooding here is not going to be a huge issue. There's one high tide cycle probably to worry about a bit, but with the low tracking where it is, the winds here are going to be northeast and then going northerly later in the day tomorrow. So I think that's going to, the tides will run higher than normal, the one high tide cycle, but that should be it. I'm not thinking it's going to be too bad with respect to the high tide. Ironmine, I don't know how to do it on an iPhone with regards to Super Chat. I know on the desktop there's like a little button there somewhere, but I don't know how it works on the iPhone. But don't worry about it. When you figure it out one day, if you want to hit it, go ahead. That's fine. But don't go crazy. Jason Schaefer, is a nor'easter an accurate word for this event? I had this conversation with somebody a little earlier about this. I don't know. I mean, we've gotten to where we've lost the original meanings of blizzard. Now nor'easter's going to start getting into question. I suppose, I got to talk to a few people about this. It's not something, Jason, that that was front and center in my brain, so I haven't really, taken it through. But let me talk to. I'll talk to Joe, Rayo, and a couple other my colleagues and see what we come up with that. What do you think, Jason? You tell me. What do you think? Georgia state of emergency, Tyler Knapp. I'm not surprised. Down there, those places are all going to shut down because they have no snow removal equipment and no way to deal with icing. John Schultz, what about eastern Nassau? Well, I've got Nassau in a general range of 3 to 4. That 6-inch. I arbitrarily, I guess, put the 4 to 6 inch line right at the Nassau-Suffolk line. That could be pulled back a little bit further to the west, or it might nudge a little bit further to the east. But I think Nassau's good for at least 3 to 4 inches out of this. I'm going to be really curious to see how it all plays out with respect to backing in from the east with the way the moisture is. Southeastern Suffolk County should be 3 to 9. Big margin of error. Where did she get the range of 3 to 9 ownage cubed? I mean, I'm not sure, I can't think that that's a Weather Service number. That certainly the Weather Service didn't give that range. They've got you in 3 to 4, or 4 to 6. What did they have? I'm sorry. Let me just go look back and look. Looks like they've got you in 4 to 6. Or was that? Wait, hang on. See, this is what happens when they don't put up. Yeah, 4 to 6. I'm sorry. They've got Nassau. They don't have the winter storm watch up in Nassau. They do have it up in Suffolk County. I kind of think maybe it would have been better to just put it up for the whole county. But you know what? I don't know what the total criteria is. 3 to 6 on News 12, then 6 to 9 on 11. I'm not gonna. Oh, I see. So you've kind of combined 11 and 12 with 3 to 9. Okay, gotcha. I think the 6 to 9 is doable, but I don't know that I would go 6 to 9 right now. I'm not sure I would go 6 to 9. So at this point, I'm not saying it's impossible. I feel better with what I did at this point. 4 or 5, maybe 6. I could feel okay with 3, 4, 5, or 6 somewhere in there works for me. But if we get a little bit more of a shift. It could, we could up those numbers. Phil Buzz, my North Shore, South Shore, and All Shore correspondent, my pal Phil Buzz is on, and I do know where the snow goes. Yes, and so does Dan Ribicoff of the Steve Wilkos Show. Yes, free plug for Dan. Groudon Science, do you think Philly could see 6 inches? I don't know, buddy. If you, Groudon, if you get the back edge of the 6-inch line going to Philadelphia, I think that would probably mean that the Jersey Shore would be get every bit of a foot, and I would probably get every bit of a foot and a half on Long Island. So I'm kind of thinking that unless we see like a really solid westward jog, that's going to be tough to pull off. So I went for a couple of inches in Philadelphia. The coastal 6-inch line is not that far from you, but it's going to take some work. On this storm is going to have to shift at least another 60 or 70 miles for that to happen. 99 Wolves pointing out, plows can only work when curbs are concrete. Charleston doesn't have concrete curbs. That's interesting. I've never been to Charleston. That's very interesting. That's why they use salt and brain down there. Or maybe you mean drain. I'm not sure. Washington, D.C., on the edge of some snow. I don't know that you're going to get much out of this up in D.C. or Baltimore. I think I have the you guys on the edge of an inch or two, but I didn't really give it a good, solid look with regards to that. And the cold is going to be really the big story that follows in all of this. I mean, just absolutely brutal cold here for Friday and into this weekend. Think of all those people that were forecasting, you know, a warm Christmas, a warm New Year, a warm December, which turned out to be below average thanks to the last week of weather. And now we've got this incredible, much below average start to January, and we aren't going to get a break from this until late early next week, and only for a couple of days, because we still have another two other shots of colder air, but it looks like this one is going to be the worst of the bunch. I think, Anne-Marie Passeretti, that snow on Long Island begins overnight on Wednesday night, let's say after midnight, sometimes between midnight and 4 a.m. It's kind of tough because it's sort of backing in from the east, and you don't often see that happen. So, you know, it might, I'm thinking sometime during the early morning hours. And John Schultz says there's time for another westward jog. That has been the trend. It has shown up again and again. Good or bad for Europe? Okay, real quick, because then I'm going to have to go. So just hang on a second. Always smiling. Just give me a second here. I'll, you know, actually I can do this. Let me just, I'll bring the model back up. I'll bring the GFS back up, and we can just look at Europe and see what's happening. So let me interact. I always aim to please here. And we'll set it for the beginning. You've got a storm sitting up over Scotland at the moment that moves out to the east. I did notice some blocking in the longer term, in some east-based blocking on some of the models, and that might mean for some colder weather eventually for the UK. But we're now into day 6 and 7, and there's that that's that big animal, 935 millibars there sitting. Look at what happens with this. I can't see the history of it. So this is the, I wonder if that's, you know, that's the coastal storm. Let me just pull up the North Atlantic view. Let me go back. So there's our big cyclone. Let me get me out of the way here. Okay, so there's our major storm as it goes into Nova Scotia. And by the way, this is going to be a big event for Nova Scotia with a big wind, snow, and rain event, and also into parts of Newfoundland. Now that low eventually moves out east of Labrador, maintains a certain, oh, this is a separate system. Okay, the one that you see here that's going to be off the UK actually comes out from the southwest here early next week, and it deepens to a 938 low. It passes by to your west and then swings northwestward and goes back toward Greenland before it just kind of sits there and mulls around between Greenland and Iceland before it disappears. That's really amazing. Let me go back to the precip for you, though. Let's go to Europe. And we'll get you the rain and snow. I haven't, you know, to be honest, I just have not been able to spend too much time looking at the long term, so I'm giving it a first view here. But, you know, there was some east-based blocking. The weather in Europe overall remains pretty warm, but maybe this model run didn't quite do it as the other run did. So I'm going to have to take a look at that a bit deeper. You know, once our weather calms down here, always smiling, I could spend a little bit more time regarding this. Let me just find my, where am I? I've disappeared yet again. I'm hiding behind one of these maps. Oh, there I go. It's a cross between Brady Bunch boxes and the Hollywood Squares. All right, so Steve LaPointe, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for hitting Super Chat. I don't know. You're going to have to get that blocking Always Smiling to come on back, which, again, I'm going to go back and look at the models. Yes, we will. Reaver 501. I don't know if I can do a midnight live stream tonight. I'm not sure. So I can't promise it. Let me see what happens and how I feel when I get home. I promise that if the models are very exciting, I'll do something. Maybe it'll be a little bit after midnight, but once I know, I'll schedule it and mark it down so you can plan your night if you want to stay up for it. My thoughts Thursday. Do I have a map out yet? Mago Minecrafts. I do. I don't have. I'm running out of time, so I can't really put it up. All right, now I'll put it up. I'm sorry. Let me find it. I just don't like to say no. Just give me a second, folks, and I'll put up my my snow forecast map. It'll just take me a moment, and I'll show you what I came up with. I'm on a streak right now, by the way. It's kind of scary. I don't know when it will end. It's going to end eventually because I can't possibly keep this pace up. But I'm on a streak. The last three systems, even though they were nickel and dime events, this is the biggest one of the bunch so far. The last three systems, the early call snowfall forecast map that I drew was the one that I just left alone all the way through, and wound up being very close to reality. So I don't know if I have developed some magical power or not, but this is what I'm going for at the moment. You can see where I have 4 to 6 inches for coastal New Jersey. I probably could have extended that line down to Cape May. I have it down to about Atlantic City. 4 to 6 for Suffolk County. 4 to 6 for southeastern Connecticut, Rhode Island, and southeastern Massachusetts. I think the 4 to 6 area, there's a risk that I could raise here. Right behind that, the 3 to 4 inches going back to about New York City into the rest of western Connecticut and the southern areas of the Hudson Valley. The part that I'm going to have the toughest time with is the western edge, because that could get pulled in eastward, and areas in northwest New Jersey back to Philadelphia could wind up very little. Or if we get a bit more of a westward shift, I might have to push that 3 to 4 inch line further back and the 4 to 6 inch line further back, and then add an 8 to 10 for somebody. But right now I'm comfortable with this, with what I have. Which is the 4 to 6 inches is the maximum amount, but definitely room for upside in eastern Long Island, coastal New Jersey, and in southeastern New England. Definitely a chance that there could be some upside there. I'm going to come back to the board. Hang on one second. You guys, by the way, have been really terrific, and I appreciate that very much. Let's see. Okay. Well, thank you, Stephen. I mean, 40 years doing this, for those of you who don't know, almost 40 years. It's actually 39, and I worked at Channel 11 in New York, News 12 Long Island, WPIX-TV in New York's Channel 11. I briefly worked at WNBC for about a year, took a short sabbatical, then now back on WPIX from time to time, and I'm also on FiOS 1 News, which is on for Long Island and for New Jersey, and my colleague Joe Rayo, who also has been doing this for 40 years, is in the Hudson Valley. All right, folks, coming up now to almost 6:50, so I got to go. Thank you very much. All of you that have hit Super Chat today, Steve LaPointe, Sean K., Deveo Don, I hope I said that right, and Salem Surveying, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind thought, the thoughts and the kindness. We will be live at Facebook at 9:15 Eastern Time with my colleague Joe Rayo. We will live stream the new NAM to see if we've got any more westward shifts going on. And if I could figure out how to do it, I'm going to try and see if I can get the what we call the plumes, the SREF. We'll try to put that on, and I will go see who's calling me some sort of model hugger on Twitter. All right, folks, have a great evening. We will see you on Facebook at 9:15 and maybe late tonight if models warrant it.